Welcome back, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone, first of all, for hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. And thanks to all the new members, new subscribers, and appreciate your support. It's been great. Disclaimer first, nothing I'm talking about is intended for legal purposes, all talking about the past and history, and give some experience and knowledge. And this topic stems from a couple of posts I had in my group. One was concerning Mother Nature. The other one was basically saying, you know, if someone was going to invent the traditional pit bull, you know, how long would it take? How would they go about it? With the Mother Nature part, I've used this term in the past. We are Mother Nature. Now, when I put the post up, there were some people that didn't understand where I was coming from, so I thought maybe if I do a video, I could explain it better. Now, certain terms, you know, survival of the fittest, only the strong survive, you know, wild animals, especially in most domestic animals, have an instinct for survival and self-preservation. The traditional pit bull doesn't have those instincts, and that's the difference between most wild and domestic animals and the traditional pit bull. We've tried to breed that survival instinct out of them. But that doesn't mean we aren't Mother Nature. We're not Mother Nature in we're trying to retain the instinct for survival, or the, you know, in our animals, you know, speaking about the past. But a lot of the other instincts or standards of nature do apply. So if you use that model in your head, you know, how do I get the best dogs, the gamest dogs, the most athletic, and this and that, you know. We're Mother Nature in that respect, because they depend on us for food and shelter and companionship. And when we decide to breed them or not, all the upkeep and the maintenance and the deworming and parasites, and if they get sick or whatever, we're the ones who handle all that. So certain things like youth, vitality, vigor, constitution, you know, ability, structure, temperament, behavior, we're responsible for instituting those and retaining them in our family of dogs, or obtaining dogs with certain qualities. And that's where that train of thought comes in. I was on the Twin Show last night, and we kind of went over that, and I suggest anybody that's interested in watching different YouTube videos, you know, Going Hard Kennels, the twins, they have a good one. You know, we're on 78 on Patreon. It's me, 78, you know, it's 78 hosts it. He's a great host. Bakari, Rastaman, Ram, you know. I also get on Samurai Kennels, you know, and even if I'm not on there, I still watch it, you know. There's a lot of good. He's a young dog man, young to me anyways, coming up. He's got a great channel. J-Bo started a new channel, if anybody's interested in that. And you know, there's several other ones, you know. I've even been on Instagram with different people. Forgive me if I forget anybody's name, but y'all know who you are, and they support me, and I try and support them. But so this conversation, the point of that was this conversation is covered in a lot of different venues, and I have my own way of doing things. And in fact, I'm writing a book on how to breed the American Pit Bull Terrier, and it'll cover a lot of these standards that I talk about all the time. Plus, it's not just me that I give examples of. I use examples from different people. People that were before me, like Dunleavy. People that agree with me, like OTK and RK and RF and Tim Gibson and stuff. We share a lot of the same commonalities. But in other genres too, like Frank Shy and Tessio, uh, Stevens, you know, Frank Shy and Walter Kay and Thomas W. Murphy and Hatch were gamefowl. Woody Stevens and Tessio in racehorses. You know, I learned a lot from Boyles. So we don't all use or agree on the same methods, but the overabundance of them we do, you know. So if you use that survival of the fittest or only the strongest survive attitude, the weak get culled in the breeding program. Ones that don't have the proper temperament or behavior or even structure, anything that you don't want in your dogs, don't retain it or don't add it to your dogs. If it's a fault, and if it's a bad fault, it generally seems like that is what comes out most, and that's the hardest thing to get rid of. So you try and avoid adding those. Even if a dog is a real good dog, you know, something that you could compete with, or very athletic, hard bite, or whatever you want to say about it. If it doesn't have more pluses in it that you're looking for in your dogs than negatives, then I would suggest not using a breeding program. Still an athletic dog, still could be used even in modern day competitions, hog hunting, stuff like that, but it's not good enough to include into your breeding program. That's the retaining and culling process of the breeder, quote unquote, nature, right? All the food, all, like I said, the upkeep, exercise, daily routines, all that matters. You're trying to develop and build and make a family of dogs that suits whatever it is you're trying to obtain or retain in your family of dogs. And then you continue forward using the individuals that have those qualities, and the ones that don't include them in your breeding program. Now there's exceptions to the rule, and a lot of times when we have conversations or posts or stuff like that, people will key on the exceptions. They don't understand that those are like flukes, and they can happen what appears to be often, because they'll throw out names of all these dogs that were produced by curs and code dogs and all this stuff, and it's not, they're not lying. Those are facts. But the fact is that that's not where most of the best dogs came from, or the best horses, or the best game fowl, or even the best mink, like my friend Joseph Carter, the Mink Man. Me and him talk, and he has a lot of the same standards that I do and other dog men do about which mink he uses for hunting rats and which mink he uses for breeding purposes. They have to be tested in the field. Our dogs had to be tested in the field. His mink have to have certain behaviors and certain instincts and ability to work and to be handled. And if they don't, he won't include them in their breeding program. So with all these other genres, it's been baffling sometimes to me for years, is why a hound dog person wouldn't do that, why a gamefowl person wouldn't do that, and a racehorse person wouldn't do that, but some pit bull people do that. They include those exceptions. They include dogs with major faults. They include dogs that have negatives, or they include unproven, untested dogs included in the past. It never made sense to me, because that's not where the best stuff comes from. You know, I prefer consistency, not hit and miss. And that's what happens when you breed those dogs with faults like that. It's hit and miss. The hit may be a great hit, but if you're hitting every 10 years, that's not good percentages. If you're hitting every once in a while. In my breeding program, if I didn't hit every breeding, then I'm starting to question the dogs I'm using. And if it was a low percentage hit, those were generally not the ones I used in my, continue to use in my breeding program. You have to make the breedings to find out which ones hit and miss, and follow the ones that hit. And if you do that, you're going to have more success, more consistency, and better dogs. Because you're trying to up your game. You're trying to make your family of dogs better. And it may only be singularly because it's just you as a breeder, right? And that's what you're going by. But at least your particular dogs will improve. If you can influence someone to improve their dogs, then all the better, And I can honestly say I've done that. It's not a bunch of people, because not everybody wants to do what someone else tells them to do, or even gives them advice to do. Or, hey, people want to do their own thing. That's fine. You don't have to follow what I say. You don't have to even agree with me. But it would be remiss of me to say, hey, do this, do that, if I haven't done this or that. If I didn't have facts and results to give as a measure of what I did worked or not. So I won't just talk about the successes. You have to talk about the failures. You have to keep stats. Most people don't. And they have to be backed up with, in my opinion, with performance. Including gameness, especially gameness. And, people talk about gameness. And if it's in your blood, you don't never have to lose it. And not every dog you're going to have is game. That's accepted. But you can have more of them than less of them if you're breeding properly. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have failures along the way. But what that means is those failures, disregard them. Get rid of them. Don't use them. So there may be a lot of them, but you're not going to retain them. You're not keeping them in your program. That's what happens when people breed on pedigree, or they look at bloodlines, You have to look at the dog first. So one thing I want to touch on is, let's say, and this came from Hunter Man, He mentioned in the past they had a dog who was off of a grand champion. The sire was a grand champion. The mother, nothing had been done with her. Her sire was a champion or grand champion, and her mother was a proven female. Or not. I forget how it went. But what I'm saying, the point is within the pedigree, there's working performance dogs. Some are not. That's typical in breeding dogs. Even mine. Not all the dogs I bred were winners, but all of them were tested to my satisfaction. Some of them I didn't compete with, but they were looked at. They were tested. And in William's case, one or two here and there had never been done nothing with, may have been a cold dog. So what do you do with that? As you move forward, you stop using dogs that weren't tested in future breedings. You stop using cold dogs. Those are exceptions, and sometimes you have to make those exceptions. That's all you've got. Just like some fanciers in Australia. They had a female that they got. All the transportation, the cost of the dog, all that is very expensive. Was very expensive back then. They didn't have a lot of options. They didn't have tons of money to spend on a bunch of dogs. So they took this female, they matched her. She lost in 2 hours or almost 2 hours or something like that. And she quit. They kept her. They were asked, why would you keep her if she quit? For that exact reason. We don't have a lot of options. We don't have a lot of dogs. She went 2 hours before she quit. We're going to breed her. That I understand. But like in William's case, in this case, as you move forward and you have more dogs, you don't have to do that anymore. That's how you, one way to help improve your dogs. So everybody has dogs, including me, that were not tested or quit or cold behind their dogs. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to use those as an example because they produce good dogs, that I'm going to keep doing it. You don't have to, and you shouldn't. And that's one way to improve your dogs. That's how you make better dogs. Or you have good dogs and more of them, rather than hit and miss here and there every once in a while. This litter was great, that litter wasn't. This, no, you got to find some consistency. That's what Mother Nature does. They eliminate the weak. The weak are eliminated. The stupid ones don't survive. The ones that don't have a bad temperament, or you don't fit in the pride or the group, they're ousted because they have, over thousands and thousands of years, survived because of what they are and because of the unit. Or if they're solitary, more solitary, like tigers, because of that, along with health, youth, vitality, constitution, all that stuff. They have to be tough, but they have to be smart too. There's no reason why our dogs can't be tough and smart as well, and game as well. So what, it just depends on what you want, what you're trying to achieve, and what your family of dogs are going to be known for. So in that scenario, that's how you weed out that stuff from the past. You stop using those dogs that have certain faults in them, and you'll improve. Another thing is, doing your research. Some people, and I've said this myself, what matters most is the dogs that are in front of you, always and forever. It was that way in the past, it'll be that way in the future. But you can't discount the past. You have to know the history of your dogs. Your own dogs, the dogs behind your dogs, your family of dogs, and other families of dogs and bloodlines and breeders. You have to do research. For me, it's imperative. The more you know, the more you can grow, or the more you know, the better you'll be at it. If you don't know what other breeders did, right or wrong, good or bad, if you don't know the results, then you can't compare it to your own stuff. You can't compare it to yourself. If you don't know the behavior, temperament, athleticism, ability of other families of dogs or other bloodlines, why would you include them into your breeding program? Because of their pedigree? Because of what you heard somebody tell you about them? You can't go back in the past because, we don't have time travel as of yet. But you can talk to guys that were familiar with it. You can compare, if you have a certain bloodline and you know someone, or you read up on about a bloodline of the past, or you know someone that had those dogs in the past, and they give you certain information about them, whether singularly themselves or overall the bloodline, and you see those resemblances in your own dogs, then that's a pretty good idea that they have captured the traits, they carry the traits of those dogs in the past. That can be helpful. And there's a difference between ideology and fact, meaning it's what you think you know, or what you kind of know, or whatever, and what really is. And a lot of people, when they speak, they don't have a lot of experience or knowledge, but they have a lot of ideology. I think this, I think that, I heard this, I heard that. There's nothing wrong with that, except if you don't have facts to back up what you think or read or heard. And that's what I mean when I talk about stats. In the wild, we have researchers, we have scientists, we have that go out and study these animals. And with that, there's certain standards with those animals that have remained for as long as they've been studied, and I'm sure before that. There's some things about them you find out, and it could be in a particular region, it could be in a particular area, it could be in a particular type of that animal, that the behaviors were different than what was previously studied or thought of, or an unknown that they didn't know about a particular animal. For instance, chimpanzees, people think, because we were taught in the past, they were herbivores. Nope, they're not. They're meat eaters. They can be cannibalistic. A lot of this stuff that we wouldn't think chimpanzees being great apes are like that, because gorillas are not generally like that and monkeys are not generally like that. But chimpanzees are a little different. They will kill their own kind, and a lot of animals kill their own kind, but they will eat them too. And they will eat other types of meat. And in my experience with animals, domestic animals, and even wild animals, I've seen, if an animal's hungry enough, it'll eat anything to survive. That's part of it. So in that respect, our breed, we want the kind of types that'll, speaking of the past, they'll do anything to survive, meaning not quit. There's a couple of train of thoughts about that. With me, it's, they don't have an instinct for survival. They don't have self-preservation on their mind. Other people feel that that's what makes them game. They do have self-preservation. They're going to do whatever it takes to stay alive, including losing their own life. So whatever your train of thought is with it, however you feel about it, it's the end result that matters. So as long as the results are good, we can debate the whys and what fors later. That's my way of looking at it. The other example was other people's way of looking at it. The result can be the same. A dog that doesn't quit. There's a difference between what you think you know and what you know. What you know comes from experience, You may have an opinion on something. You may think something is a certain way, and you may be right. But until it's proven, at least in your case, at least in your particular situation, it's not a fact. And some facts don't hold true for everyone and everything. But they may hold true for you, and you can keep that as part of your understanding and knowledge of your own dogs, or of the pit bulls that you're familiar with in general. Things have a tendency to come full circle. In the 80s, there was an article written about, or mentioned at least in an article, by Frank Shy. And the thing came, gamefowl people, they want hard hitters, they want deep cutters, And he mentioned that that's what they started getting. That's what they started breeding for. They keyed on that. And what happens eventually with anything that you focus too much on, you'll get it, but you lose other things that go along with it, that should go along with it. And you were seeing more birds fly off, and more birds quit, quote unquote quit, And the same is true in the pit bull world. People concentrate on the hard mouth. It's impressive. It's necessary. But what ends up happening, and this is generational, is that those hard-mouthed dogs start quitting. Why? It's my experience and opinion, educated opinion, is when you start concentrating on a trait like that too much, any trait too much, you lose the other ones, because those other ones are not being focused on. So in the case of hard-mouthed dogs, they're not eliminating dogs, or they're not finding out if the dogs are game or not. They're not eliminating dogs that quit, or because they're so devastating, they don't know whether the dog was game or not. And then what happens? They have to start get more gameness, get more gameness. You shouldn't lose it. That's my whole point in the first place. The two can go hand in hand in any trade. It's the same thing with the gameness part. You go too far with game only, then you got a bunch of dumb plugs that have no ability and can't do anything. It's impressive nonetheless, and that is the staple of the breed. But in my time, you couldn't win with just a game dog per se. Something that takes punishment, doesn't have any ability, doesn't quit, but he can't do nothing either. And you'll hear that throughout the history of the breed. People think in the past that's all they cared about was gameness. No, it wasn't. The facts don't show that. Research doesn't show that. History of the breed doesn't show that. And when someone comes up, I want hard-biting killers, and they've done that generational too in the past, this and that. They think they invented it. They think that they keen on that they're the only ones who thought of that. Bullshit. It's always been what is happening in present time has also happened in the past at some point. So you never, you're looking for consistency. You're looking for a well-rounded individual, in my opinion. That's what I was looking for. Kind of an all-around athlete. One that could do most everything well, but didn't necessarily have to be an expert at one thing. You're limited in that respect. Because a well-rounded dog that's rough and tough and game and smart and fast and strong can beat whatever is put in front of them. So that is one aspect to it as well. That full circle thing, So you need a balance, You need dogs that, when you start talking about all these traits, and I do it all the time, whether you're talking about gameness, hard mouth, air, ability, balance, wrestling ability, intelligence, finish. You shouldn't be choosing one over the other. You try and get them all as much as you can into several individuals into your family of dogs. One may be better at one of those things than the other, and the other may be better at something else than that one, but you have those traits in there generally. He may not be a bone crusher, but he's bites hard enough to make it effective. He may not be the fastest dog in the world, the quickest, but he's fast enough. He may not be the most powerful dog you have, but he's strong. He may not be a pit general or have ring generalship, but he knows how to handle himself. He's smart enough to be, when he's on offense, to avoid getting us hurt as much as possible. And he knows where to go to inflict the most damage. So, like I said, they're not going to be expert at all of it, but good at all of it, good at most of it, and then you can increase and improve on those particular things, How long would it take you to develop a new breed, a totally new breed? It would take years, decades probably. But it doesn't have to take a lifetime, because most breeds were not developed over hundreds and hundreds of years. They may have been improved on in hundreds and hundreds of years. But a modern day breeder that I'm familiar with, they did a show on him, took him 25 years. So I would use that as a general, as an average. And in his mind, they weren't going to be perfected until he had 40 years in. So, nothing wrong with that, but that's just a general, just an average time span. That's for creating a breed that you're comfortable with, that does what you want it to do. How long does it take to create a new breed in itself? AKC says 3 generations. In pit bulls, I would say your family of dogs, or a new bloodline, or your own, not a new one, there ain't no new ones, but your own bloodline, about 3 to 7 generations. Because what you have to do is you have to understand what traits you're trying to capture. Then you breed the individuals that retain those traits. Then you acknowledge the ones that have those traits from the dogs that you've bred. You key on them. You keep them in your families of dogs, and you can do it in 3 generations. Because when you make the first breeding, those are your dogs. That's the starting of your bloodline or your family of dogs. But after 3 generations, and let's say 4, for pit bull's sake, because they're so unique, in 4 generations, you'll have your own family of dogs. And 4 generations doesn't mean 4 breedings, doesn't mean 3 or 4 breedings. It means generations of breedings. So if you have a female and you breed her, to get the 3 generations, you would have to then breed the offspring off of her, and then the offspring off of those. That's your 3 generations, and then the offspring off of those. Same with a male. It's not just breeding them to 3 females. You could breed a male to 10 females. That's still only 1 generation of breeding. And you'd have to take the offspring from those breedings and breed them to anything, back to the male, to something else, outcross them, whatever, line bred, however you feel like you want to breed them, and that's your 2nd generation. Then you would take the offspring from that, breed again, that's your 3rd. So that's what is meant by developing your own family of dogs or your own bloodline. You need 3. With pit bulls, I'll go with 4. You can do it. And people have done it, and I've done it, and others that I know and helped, and others that I know and had no influence on. They did it. So this is a little bit about Mother Nature. I'm going to call this Mother Nature. I got some more, got another t-shirt coming out. I'll do a video on that. Thanks to Mr. Gray. I got some more interviews coming up. And, you know, anybody wants to contact me for any merch, it's you can get a hold of me on Facebook Messenger, or my email, richardjschoolboy60@gmail.com, or on Instagram. Getting a lot of good feedback from my keeps. They send me pictures and videos, so I post those too with their permission, and it's going good. And I enjoy the camaraderie with other shows I'm on, other dogmen, and we'll just keep it going. So thank you very much.